In the year 2000X, the world was covered in weird fighting game updates. The seas have dried, the earth has cracked, all forms of balanced fighting games seem to have disappeared off the face of the earth. And yet, Kusoge didn't disappear. If you can't tell, we're talking about the legendary Japanese arcade and PS2 fighting game Hokuto no Ken, or Fist of the North Star if you're a gaijin like me. Released in 2005 in the arcades and then in 2007 on the PS2 and developed by Arc System Works, this game has a reputation for being arguably the most broken fighting game of all time. Seriously, I'm used to seeing broken moves and movement and combos in games like X-Men vs Street Fighter, but this game takes the cake. As a disclaimer, I'm not an expert at Hokuto no Ken by any means, but I love the game for its unique mechanics, supers, and batshit insane gameplay. Without further ado, let's dive into the insanity of Hokuto no Ken. Let's begin by going over the character roster. There are 10 playable characters, and while this may seem small, the characters themselves are varied enough in terms of gameplay to justify it. First up is Kenshiro, the protagonist of the series. The legendary master of the deadly martial art Hokuto Shinken, Kenshiro travels around the wasteland to defend the weak and put an end to evil in excessively bloody ways. He's a solid all-rounder character who has a complete toolkit with an invincible DP, so he's good to use for players of all skill levels. Rao is Kenshiro's adoptive younger brother, and out of the 4 brothers of Hokuto Shinken, he is the eldest. Going under the name of Kenno, he forms a ruthless army to conquer the wasteland in search of power. In the game, Rao is slow and very powerful, with potential for touch of death combos from pretty much any hit he lands, even without any meter. His slow speed and large size are his primary weaknesses, but when he hits hard. Shin is obsessed with Kenshiro's fiancée Yuria, and after mastering the deadly art of Nanto Koshuken, he kidnaps Yuria, nearly kills Kenshiro, and dedicates himself to making sure Ken and Yuria don't end up together. In the game, Shin is a hard-hitting kind of guy. He does good damage and he has a nice command grab, so you can use him to bully the enemy with his evil power. Rei is the successor of Nanto Suchoken, another powerful martial art. After a mysterious figure with 7 scars on his chest kidnaps his sister Airi, Rei goes mad and spends all of his time trying to find and rescue his sister. In the game, he's a very fast, speed-based character. He's the only character with an air throw and a triple jump, and he's also perfect for beginners. Thouser, or Souther as he's sometimes called, is a ruthless tyrant, and the sole successor of the Nanto Hoken. He dubs himself the Holy Emperor, and begins to kidnap children to build what he calls the Holy Cross Mausoleum. In the game, he's all offense, no defense. With the lowest amount of health in the game, Thouser is a beast when he gets going, but when he's on the defense, he might as well give up. Jagi is the second youngest of the 4 Hokuto brothers, and he relies on fighting dirty to win. He wears a helmet to hide his severely disfigured head after a fight with Kenshiro that went wrong. In the game, he's all about zoning and traps. He's widely regarded as the weakest character in the game, and he has not one, but 2 9-1 matchups against him. Ouch. Judah, or Yuda as he's sometimes known, is the successor of Nanto Kokaku-ken, and he's so egotistical to the point where Vega from Street Fighter would blush. In the game, he's another trap-based character, with a direct comparison being Testament from Guilty Gear. He's not bad, but he does take a lot of skill and game knowledge to be effective. Mr. Heart is one of the 4 chiefs of the King organization, which is led by Shin, and he is massive. In the game, he's a grappler, and as such, he lacks a lot of movement tools such as a forward dash. He's considered weak due to his horrible movement, but his damage output isn't bad. Mamiya is a warrior who looks nearly identical to the aforementioned Yuria, Kenshiro's fiancée. Her parents were slain by Yuda, and he branded his initials onto her back. In the game, she's the only female character, so if you want someone to simp for in Hokuto no Ken, Mamiya is the girl for you. She has poor defense, but is great at fighting from a distance, so if you like to hang back and attack with long-range pokes, Mamiya is perfect. Finally, and I saved him for last for a good reason, Toki. Toki is yet another of the 4 Hokuto Shinken brothers, and his style makes his enemies feel intense ecstasy before they explode instead of pain. In the game, Toki is the best and most broken character by far. He can do everything you want him to, and is completely, utterly, insanely strong. A lot of his specials come out in either 1 or 2 frames, and he has 2 9-1 matchups in his favour. He's terrifying to fight against because of all this. When it comes to gameplay, again, I'm not an expert, but I'll do my best to cover pretty much everything. The basics are quite like Guilty Gear. There are 4 attack buttons: light punch, light kick, heavy punch, and heavy kick, and these can be chained together Gatling style. There does exist a 5th button, however. This is your boost button, and by spending this resource on the bottom, you can dash forward instantly to continue the combo, so it's a bit like a roaming cancel in Guilty Gear. By pressing both lights, you can do a heavy strike, an attack that stuns the opponent for a bit, and is also unblockable. Both punch buttons at the same time will give you Grave Shoot, an upwards launching strike that lets you jump cancel it to do an air combo. Both heavy buttons will give you Banishing Strike, a move that sends the enemy flying and wall splats on hit, and if you hold the buttons down, the move becomes unblockable. Hokuto no Ken also has typical anime fighting and techniques such as air dashing, double jumps, alpha counters, push blocks, etc. However, the final and most important technique is the Fatal KO. See these 7 stars below the character health bars? Certain moves take off a star, and when they're all gone, the Star of Death appears. When this shows up, the enemy is screwed, because this can happen. Yep, this game has instant kills, and most of them can be comboed into with natural B&B easy to use combos. In other words, you can convert a simple straight hit into an instant kill when the enemy is out of stars. You know what, now is a great time to cover why this game has a reputation for being Kusoge. To begin, the game has what's called dribbling combos, and it looks like this. You can literally dribble the enemy infinitely like a basketball just to style on them. This works because when a combo reaches a certain amount of hits, the game tries to prevent you from doing an infinite by interfering with the enemy's physics, but what ends up happening is the opposite. In other words, the game's infinite prevention system pretty much makes it easier for you to do infinites. There are similar mechanics and techniques that also allow for insane combos, but I'd rather show them than describe them, so I hope you've enjoyed all the crazy stuff that's been on screen so far. As far as content goes, there's nothing mind-blowing in the game. There's arcade mode, which is the usual fare where you fight against multiple AI opponents before finally reaching a final boss. Versus CPU and versus 2P is self-explanatory, training mode is exactly that, survival is exactly that, but the interesting history mode caught my interest. As all the text is in Japanese, I'm not able to read any of it, but from what I'm able to piece together, it's a series of lore battles and information about the Fist of the North Star series in general, and it focuses on different characters. I think you get to recreate story battles that take place in the original manga, like the battle between Kenshiro and Mr. Heart for example. Honestly, there really isn't much to go over when it comes to content, because there simply just isn't that much here. Hokuto no Ken lives and dies as a multiplayer game first and foremost, so how did people receive it when the game came out and people could play with each other? Because the game is so obscure and only released in Japan, it's hard to find reviews, but what I did find during my research was that while most fans appreciated the fan service, fast-paced gameplay, soundtrack, art style, and more, many were turned off by how broken it was, and the lack of major content didn't help too. However, Hokuto no Ken became a massive hit in Japan, being featured in tournaments such as Super Battle Opera 2006 and 2008, and the game is still being played today the world over. There's a Discord server for the game which you can join if you'd like to learn more, and I recommend it, because the game is totally awesome and worth learning about if you like obscure fighting games like me. Tournaments for the game are still being done today in the current year, and I highly recommend checking them out on YouTube. With all that said and done, I implore you to try this game out. It's not too hard to pick up and learn some basic combos, and it feels fantastic to do some disgustingly broken stuff to the enemy. If you like other fighting games like old school Guilty Gear or Kusoge like Bishoujo Senshi Sailor Moon S, Hokuto no Ken will be right up your alley. It's really easy to play on any PS2 emulator or on Flycast if you'd like to try it out with online play. Thanks a lot for watching, I hope you learned something about the game, and I'll see you in the next one.